So good evening and welcome to the second of the Fratelli Fridays. Today, I'm looking at the third of the Fratelli Fridays. You know, one of the interesting things about Fratelli Tutti, I realized, is that it looks at fraternity, and that in a way is a word which many of us have understood differently. We see fraternity sometimes as brotherhood, and in some cases, friendship comes in. But I think what Pope Francis brings two separate words, fraternity and social friendship. Today we are looking at chapter 5 and chapter 6. So far we have looked at chapters 1 to 4 over the previous 2 Fridays. Dark clouds over the world, looking at the Good Samaritan. And then of course, looking at how migrants were treated, are treated, and a heart open to the world. The theme of the 5th chapter, interestingly, I'm going to give you first a summary, and then we look at certain highlights of some of the points, is a better kind of politics. Now, the very word politics, some of the people the first reactions to Fratelli Tutti was, oh, it's a political encyclical. It's not. It really brings to mind all that is good in terms of the social teaching of the church. So let's look at a brief summary. If you're looking at para 180, this particular section, chapter 5, has 44 paragraphs from 154 to 197. And according to Pope Francis, he says politics represents one of the most valuable forms of charity because it is placed at the service of the common good. That's para 180. And it recognizes the importance of people. Again, there's more that we will talk about when we say who are those people, but particularly those people who are seen in the open category. What we mean by this is that it's not narrow, it's not defined by territory, it's not defined by tribe, it's not defined by race. But Pope Francis brings in therefore a word, a bigger word. Sometimes in the modern press, we look at this word very frighteningly, populism. Populist measures are suggested at the time of elections across the world, whether it was in India, Roti Kapada Makan, whether it was employment promises in the US, and we will reclaim, etc. You remember these 4 years ago, and even very recently in the US elections, presidential elections. But I think what Pope Francis is saying, don't ignore the legitimacy of the notion of people. Who are those people? Don't just try to use people to further your selfish needs. And to some extent, therefore, as we go further into understanding some of those paragraphs, particularly para 159, we'll see that a better politics is one that protects work, employment. There's this interesting point coming up later, which we look at, where work is an important dimension of social life, and it is the job of politics to increase not just employment for the sake of votes, which is populism, another form. It's also a need that people have to work. So there was this interesting abbreviation which I liked very much. Probably in the early 90s, one of our larger funding organizations in India shared this one. It goes HEHE, health, education, housing, employment. And if you can work on these 4 elements, health, education, housing, and employment, that particular organization really believed that it would be the key to ensuring a better quality of life for all. Now, Pope Francis in this particular chapter, chapter 5, looks at a strategy against poverty as not simply just to give work for the sake of living, what happens sometimes with many of our charitable outreaches. It says go further. Don't just use work as a means for a quick fix solution. Find a solution to all that attacks fundamental human rights, such as social exclusion, the marketing of organs, tissues, weapons, and drugs, sexual exploitation, slave labor, terrorism, and organized crime. The Pope is making an emphatic appeal to definitely eliminate human trafficking. We know that during the pandemic, it has increased drastically. We're hearing stories across the world and also in India of how human trafficking has become so much, if you like, an excuse to ensure continuation, survival. Some people say this is one way in which we will help others to survive. It's not true. And then, of course, he talks about hunger being a criminal action because food is an inalienable right. This is para 188 and 189. I'm going to take you a little forward to the type of politics we actually need. Pope Francis is underscoring that it's a politics centered on human dignity and not subject to laws of economy, not subject to finance. Because he says the marketplace cannot by itself resolve every problem. He explains a little and connects it back to the subprime crisis, the financial crash of 2008. The havoc wreaked by financial speculation demonstrates this. And then, of course, he says, let's go beyond, let's go beyond. Don't not just talk about employment, populism, but also let's look at the larger context. He proposes a reform of the United Nations. In the face of the predominance of the economic dimension, he says, a task of the United Nations will be to give substance to the concept of a family of nations, working for the common good, the eradication of poverty, and the protection of human rights. He says we need to focus more on negotiation, mediation, arbitration. He himself did that in the case of South Sudan over the last 2 years. But I think what he's emphasizing has a lot to do with what's happening in all our hotspots of the world, whether it is Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, all across. The UN, he says, must promote the force of law rather than the law of force. I want to take you to chapter 6. Chapter 6, very interestingly, has one method that we can use to increase fraternity and social friendship. And the word, a single word, is dialogue. Dialogue. Approaching, speaking, listening, looking at, and coming to know and understand the other are all paths to dialogue. And I think what's important more and more is the understanding that dialogue is not just about social media exchanges. It's not about how many platforms or how many groups or WhatsApp that I'm on, but it's about looking at a method of respect for others. When I dialogue, I automatically am saying, I respect your opinion, even though I may not agree with it. And I think this is an interesting part. Chapter 6 has 27 points from 198 to 224, paras 198 to 224. And he particularly focuses dialogue as an essential tool to build human dignity. He says, knowing how to dialogue is the way to open the world and build social friendship. And so we have those two elements in the subtitling of Fratelli Tutti. You see, the first one was fraternity, the second one social friendship. He talks about an art of encounter. Encountering everyone, even those on the world's peripheries, and with indigenous people. We see that a lot in India, where there's very often people on the fringes, people, tribals, OBCs, people who are left to themselves because they don't form part of what we call an exclusive, our core beings in society. He says each of us can learn something from others, and I like this next line very much. No one is useless and no one is expendable. I think if we just stay with that particular line, there's so much that we can look at in terms of our own dealings with people. No one is useless. No one is expendable. He refers therefore also to a very interesting attitude, the attitude of respect for diversity, and brings in this method to use. He says, let's start being more kind. It could be a smile, it could be a word of encouragement, it could be even just listening for 5 minutes. But I think somewhere we need to develop this ability to see that kindness, to use terms from para 222, kindness is a star shining in the midst of darkness that frees us from the cruelty, the anxiety, the frantic flurry of activity that prevails in the contemporary era. I want to take you to certain sections that I thought were very useful, very important, especially in the context of what we are doing in chapter 5 and chapter 6. So if I will highlight some of these. If you would like to, you can always look at the complete document. It's available on vatican.va. You can also look at the number of commentaries available. But I want to highlight some things, particularly starting from chapter 5, where we are looking at the first paragraph, 154. The development of a global community of fraternity based on the practice of social friendship. Now, he's not just talking here about people, okay? He's not just talking about groups of people. He's talking also about countries. The global south, for years there has been this focus on how, to some extent, the first world looked at the third world as, a place to dump, whether it was ships being dismantled for scrap, whether it was asbestos sheets being dumped across. So Asia first, and then now, of course, Africa. And to a large extent, Pope Francis is saying, politics must be at the service of the common good. But very often it's the opposite. On one side you have liberalism, which serves the economic interests of the powerful. I'm now on point 155, para 155, and he's differentiating between two interesting words. Populism, he says, is something that we see in terms of developing, if you like, a group around a certain politician or a certain leader who uses those people very often not for democracy. It's more about looking at what can I get from this. A whole selfishness that is based on, let me use these people, show that I am working for them, but at the end of the day, it is about the politician's own interests that are met. Because maybe it's a large vote bank, it could be slum dwellers, it could be people in certain disadvantaged sections. Let me push for reservation for these people so they will vote for me for the next election. I think this is very sad because we see a lot of this, we know about it, but he's also saying let's start looking at how these words that have invaded the communications media, everyday conversation, we know this, we see it. We hear of so many SOPs being given pre-election across states which are going to elections, or changes that are being made in countries where you see people suddenly being told, vote for me and I'll do this. But what did you do the last time? I think this is where Pope Francis has talked about something which is so connected to what we, especially in Mumbai and in India, experience. Populist ideas. People getting praise for doing something, but actually they are doing it for their own selfish purposes. I take you therefore to another interesting thing that says that people, this is now para 158, he says people is not a logical category, nor is it a mystical category. It's rather a mythic category. When you use the word people, we may say people in Bandra, people in this parish, people in a certain area or a certain office. We are really using this as for the sake of explanation. So we are saying, okay, people in a certain section, all people living in Mumbai, all those who live in Bandra, all those who belong to St. Peter's Parish. But what is important is to see that to be part of a people is to be part of a shared identity which arises from social and cultural bonds. And if you want to go a little further, because you see, the whole question of what is culture. Is it just a way of life that, today there's very often this focus on whether people are experiencing good cultural norms. What's happening today, we are talking about people who work in different sections and saying, okay, these people have left aside certain elements of their own culture. I want to talk about, particularly in para 159, how very often, this is from the document, this can degenerate into an unhealthy populism when individuals are able to exploit a people's culture politically, under whatever banner, for their own personal advantage, or continuing grip on power. Or at other times they seek popularity by appealing to the most basest and selfish inclinations of certain sectors of the population. I think to the large extent, we are talking about closed groups, populist groups, people who are saying, look, this is what we want. So it could be a group that says, we want this particular reservation only for our group. And that is where the word people gets distorted. We need to therefore see that all of this, para 161, says, another sign of the decline of popular leadership is concern for short-term advantage. One meets popular demands for the sake of gaining votes or support, but without advancing in an arduous effort to generate resources that people need to develop and earn a living by their own efforts and creativity. In this regard, Pope Francis looks back at Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, and connects some statements that he has made there as well to this encyclical. Okay, let's come to the crux of point, chapter 5. We talked earlier about employment, no? And Pope Francis brings that in para 162, where he says, the biggest issue is employment. Its need is to provide everyone with the opportunity to nurture the seeds God has planted in each of us, our talents, our initiative, and our innate resources. Now, to a large extent, many of us sometimes see employment. I was asking some of our students at the University of Mumbai, why do people go to work? And the 99.9% of that class said it is to earn money. And sometimes it doesn't go beyond earning our daily bread. What's important is to see that employment has to be about furthering my personal growth, building healthy relationships with my colleagues, with my boss, with people whom I deal with. Self-expression is something that should come through in the course of my employment. There has to be an exchange of gifts. I'm not just working to earn money to eat for tomorrow or today. I need to start to see that there is something that I am building in the course of what I do as part of my work. And a line I like very much in the same paragraph, work gives us a sense of shared responsibility for the development of the world and ultimately for our life as a people. So here's another notion of, who are people? Who are the people? Okay, so moving away from this concept of employment, I go down to another concept that is coming up very strongly in chapter 5, charity. Charity calls for an effective process of historical change that embraces everything: institutions, law, technology, experience, professional expertise, scientific analysis, administrative procedures, and so forth. Very often we do not connect these things with the word charity. Charity is seen as, okay, I give something to somebody because I have some excess, or if you want to go to that higher level of the meaning of the word charity as love, okay, how does love connect to all of these? And Pope Francis is going back again, if you remember, to chapter 2 of Fratelli Tutti. He says, if we go back to that example of the Good Samaritan could not have done what he did unless there was also a social system in place, unless there was a structure like an innkeeper there, whom he could use to be part of that need of helping the person who was beaten up. He could have said, I feel sorry, and just helped him there and left him back on the road. But because there is a system, and therefore he talks about how we need to probably build institutions, build institutes, build certain organizations. I'll take this from the document itself. This demonstrates the need for a greater spirit of fraternity, but also a more efficient worldwide organization to help resolve the problems plaguing the abandoned who are suffering and dying in poor countries. There is no one solution, no single acceptable methodology, no economic recipe that can be applied indiscriminately to all. And so I want to bring you to one very interesting word. I think we also saw this in the earlier set of letters that were put together between March and April, Pope Francis' letters to different groups during the course of the lockdown, coronavirus period particularly. We see this particular phrase, selfish indifference, and he brings it further to a point that he calls concupiscence, the human inclination to be concerned only with myself, my group, and my own petty interests. And I think this is something that we know for a fact today more and more as we look at what's happening within our urban setting, our parishes, within our SCCs, sometimes even within our families. Me and myself, maybe a little more, and that's it. My own petty interests need to be looked at. And he's saying charity cannot be occupying the same space as concupiscence, the selfishness. It can be overcome. The selfishness can be overcome with the help of God. That is something that we all hope for, and towards the end of the document, Pope Francis brings that back again as we start to pray for it. But right now, going forward, we looked at the fact that the document looks at the fact that there is a need for employment, there is a certain movement in the world which talks about economics. Okay, so economists particularly have said we can solve the problem of poverty, very interestingly, without talking to the poor. We just, dump, let us say, certain things, we'll offer this, we'll tweak some economic model. He brings in two phrases in para 168, where he says, very often neoliberalism talks about a spillover effect. So we have now let it spill over to someone else, or a trickle down effect. Okay, he says this does not use, this type of words are not solutions to societal problems. Very often that alleged spillover does not resolve inequality but gives rise to newer forms of violence. Okay? I'm going to take you fast forward through the interesting paragraphs. I'm sure at some point you will pick up this document and read it, because there's a whole lot that talks about how very often we are ignoring those around us. Therefore, there's no social friendship, no fraternity. We are more worried about how does it affect me? How does it affect my family? How does it affect my work? We are now going away from the individual to international power. I'm going to point 170, which says the actual strategies developed worldwide in the wake of the 2008 subprime crisis fostered, unfortunately, greater individualism, less integration, and increased freedom for the truly powerful. I think we've seen some of this happening in our recent times as we are looking at people who are growing richer, not just in terms of using the right methods, but also cheating others. So whether it is cheating people through various bank scams, whether it is non-banking financial companies, we have a whole list of these. So, Pope Francis particularly is bringing home the need for a reform of the UNO, the United Nations Organization, and of economic institutions and international finance. So he carries on through one of the themes that he brought through in the Year of Mercy. He says the concept of the family of nations must acquire real teeth. The international community must be founded on the sovereignty of each member state. I take you a little forward there. We're going now to para 177. Politics must not be subject to the economy, nor should the economy be subject to the dictates of an efficiency-driven paradigm of technocracy. Technocracy, according to him, is not where we can leave it to the people who, say, we will do this, we will put these systems in place and they will work by themselves. I think we've seen this a lot in terms of, shortcuts sometimes. Let's get all of this organized and then automatically something will trickle down to the poor. I'm particularly taking the ending of point of para number 180. He says, once more I appeal for a renewed appreciation of politics as a lofty vocation and one of the highest forms of charity inasmuch as it seeks the common good. I'm going to just read you a bit from what this political charity is. Many of us understand, again, like I said earlier, charity as something that I do individually, individual charity. He's talked a little about social charity, but political charity is born of a social awareness that transcends the individual mindset. Where social charity makes us love the common good, it must effectively seek the good of all people. That's what he highlights as political charity, in the social dimension that unites them. So good politics will seek ways of building communities at every level of social life in order to recalibrate and reorient globalization and thus avoid its disruptive effects. These words, I think, are words that need to start in our own ways of dealing in terms of how do we include others, in terms of how do we connect with others, because very often in our own social milieu, we have these barriers. Sometimes we say classes or castes, all types of things that somehow prevent us from seeing the other as a person with human dignity, as a person just like us. And the next para will talk about the need for human respect, respect for human dignity. Okay, let me take you very quickly to the exercising of this love, okay? The exercising of political love. He says, its acts must proceed directly from the virtue of charity, and it is much more than just, giving somebody something for today. We have to create more sound institutions, more just regulations, more supportive structures. This is para 186, and it goes forward to say, it is an act of charity to assist someone suffering. But even if we don't know that person, to work to change the social conditions that cause that suffering. So the example that is given in the document itself, very interestingly, says if someone helps an elderly person to cross a river, that's a good act of charity. But supposing there's a politician, person there, elected person there, who then builds a bridge to cross that river, that is an act of charity. So while you can help as an individual by just, giving someone something to eat, the political, with good, strong political will, not populism, can actually create a job for that other person, and this political charity will be something that characterizes his political love, his political charity. I think this is something that we need to see more and more, especially as we are encouraging more of our young people today to look at making a difference, getting into civic life, political life, to take up careers in the administrative services. This has to be where we look at the fact that as individuals, even today, there are many who are doing a lot, and yet that is limited by the amount of money, power, capacity, time. So much more could be achieved if the system of politics or the political system changes, with so many people working towards the good of all. That has to change. Okay, let me therefore take you to 196. I think we'll go straight there. Just one point to highlight again, once again, the fact that politicians are doers, builders with ambitious goals, possessed of a broad, realistic and pragmatic gaze that looks beyond their own borders. This is interesting. Their biggest concern should not be about a drop in the polls, but about finding effective solutions to the phenomena of social and economic exclusion. Much of what I talked about earlier, with its baneful consequences, human trafficking, the marketing of human organs and tissues, the sexual exploitation of boys and girls, slave labor, including prostitution, the drug and weapons trade, terrorism, and international organized crime. We need to ensure that our institutions are truly effective in the struggle against all these scourges. This is something that's challenging for all of us, whether we take up public life or not. Each of us as individuals. Just take just that paragraph, 188, and just reflect on it and see in our own lives, are we really standing up for what is right in our institutions, in our homes, in our schools? We need to see how we can do this. Politics needs to make the effective elimination of hunger one of its foremost and imperative goals. This is another point that chapter number 5, which talks about a better kind of politics, is not just for the elected leaders or those who want to enter politics. I think it's also telling each of us, we allow our brothers and sisters to die of hunger and thirst. I am reading through from this document right now, without shelter or access to healthcare. These we can no longer tolerate, they can no longer be deferred. That was point number 189. And therefore we are looking at the fact that over a period of time, we must be able to actually get up and take action. This is important. Over a period of time, we've comfortably said, okay, the Pope's put out an encyclical, very nice. He's done this on the eve of the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, used the titling from one of St. Francis of Assisi's exhortations. happily taking that. But I think Fratelli Tutti is something that will challenge everyone, not just Catholics, not just people in organized groups, but everyone, to actually see what we can do to correct the course. One of those interesting things that he's hoping will happen as a result of these few lines that he puts together. Politics is something more noble than posturing, marketing, and media spin, which sow nothing but division, conflict, and a bleak cynicism that is incapable of mobilizing people to pursue a common goal. So as I come to the end of chapter 5, I just want to highlight some of the questions that Pope Francis says. As time goes on, the questions will not be how many people endorsed me, how many voted for me, how many had a positive image of me. The really painful questions will be, how much love did I put into my work? What did I do for the progress of our people? What mark did I leave on the life of society? What real bonds did I create? What positive forces did I unleash? How much social peace did I sow? What good did I achieve in the position that was entrusted to me? I think this is not just for our MPs, MLAs, corporators. I think this is true also for each of us in the roles that we play in life, in our parishes, in our society, in our homes. We need to ask ourselves these questions as well. I'll quickly take you to chapter 6, which is a much shorter chapter. It has only 27 points, and the primary focus there, like I said earlier, is about dialogue and friendship in society. So in fact, very often when you look at what's happening in terms of discussions on social media or interactions on TV or TV channels, we're seeing that very often there's a lot of noise. The more that someone can shout does not make them right. Yeah? So he says the media's noisy potpourri of facts and opinions is often an obstacle to dialogue, since it lets everyone cling stubbornly to his or her own ideas, interests and choices with the excuse that everyone else is wrong. This is para 201, and in the same paragraph he says discussion is often manipulated by powerful special interests that seek to tilt public opinion unfairly in their favor. This kind of manipulation is not exercised only by governments, but it's also seen in economics, politics, communication, religion, and other spheres. People try to impose their own ideas. So if I could highlight the key point of chapter 6, it is about respect for myself, but respect for the other's opinions. I need not change, but I listen, and then I have the ability to respect the other's point of view. Para 203, authentic social dialogue involves the ability to respect the other's point of view and then to examine it. Sometimes I can be so close to another opinion that I say, sorry, this is my opinion, and I'll die with it. I want to highlight two elements from here. You can always read through those paragraphs. It's a lot to go through, worth reading. Every line in a way can give you a chance to reflect. I want to particularly look at two words that he brings in here. The first word is truth. Pilate's famous statement, what is truth? But the question today for all of us as we are living in that postmodern society, what is truth? Truth is often manipulated, distorted. You can have people who specialize in putting out fake news, who create stories for the media, and we lap it up. Whether it is on WhatsApp groups, whether it is on the email, whether it's in our newspapers, even sometimes in our conversations. You hear people who are so convinced that what they read, what they hear is totally the truth. I think when we are talking about dialogue, it needs therefore to go beyond what is fed to us sometimes, fed to us through the media. So he's talking about in this section that we need to have what is known as social integration. It's not just about looking at people and going by first impressions or media impressions or what they can offer. He particularly brings in the type of reaction that many people have to people of indigenous cultures. I'll repeat that line I liked very much in this particular chapter, and I think I've taken it twice already. No one is useless and no one is expendable. Therefore, we need another way of looking at things. We need another way of looking at people. I'll bring that point again back again. Should be passionate about meeting others. This is para 216. Seeking points of contact, building bridges, planning a project that includes everyone. This is something that I think today, in the year 2020, we are realizing thanks to the pandemic. As the entire migrant exodus began out of our urban areas, out of our metropolises, suddenly we realized there were cases of people here who were talking about how there was nobody to transfer material from warehouses onto trucks. There were in some cases no truck drivers. I think to some extent we have learned some lessons, but human memory, we may forget that before the end of this year itself. I think what Pope Francis particularly reminds us in this particular document, in this encyclical, is that we must start to respond to these challenges. We must start to build those bridges if we are talking about dialogue. So acknowledging others, I'll take you to point para 219. When one part of society exploits all that the world has to offer, acting as if the poor do not exist, there will eventually be consequences. Sooner or later, ignoring the existence and rights of others will erupt in some form of violence, often when it is least expected. This is something that we are seeing happening today as unemployment has increased, families are under pressure. We've looked at a number of these cases all across Bandra, particularly across Mumbai, chain snatching, people having house break-ins. We're looking at this happening both in terms of, so if you're looking at the newspapers these days, you're seeing a large amount of organized crime, people who are actually attempting to steal ATM machines, people who are attacking others, violent attacks on people, just so that they have something. Of course, there have been some very interesting ones reported where you have a ATM van that was driving around with the cash to refill ATMs, and the driver takes his chance and vanishes with some 4 crores. And somebody said, only 4 crores? There's somebody else in an NBFC who's vanished with 48,000 crores. So these are again questions about how we see these ideas as something that we need to be able to understand. Starts off also with our own dealings. How do we deal with others? I bring in this second point. Like I said, the second point is, first was truth. The second is kindness. Are we responding with kindness today to a variety of people we encounter? We used the word encounter earlier, encountering others. And Pope Francis brings that in beautifully here when he says, the gift of a smile, speak a word of encouragement, listen amid general indifference. Through the pandemic, we've heard of a number of people who experienced difficulty, alone, a feeling of being isolated, sometimes people living in the same home who felt depressed. There were cases of people going all the way, committing suicide, and at the same time, you had a whole lot of others who were affected by that one person. There was this classic case of a 22-year-old girl whose best friend right through school was successful at committing suicide in September. And this girl has locked herself up, refuses to speak even to her own family. And these days, although her mother has been encouraging her to meet a counselor right through from that point onwards, she's at least agreed to meet a counselor, but we're still waiting. She's so caught up in that feeling of having lost her best friend that she blames herself indirectly, that's the word she uses, for not being available to listen. Now it's possible that there are so many like these who need someone to listen to them. I'll close with that chapter 6 ending before we take a quick summary. Kindness facilitates the opening of new paths where hostility and conflict would burn all bridges. So as we come to the end of the third Fratelli Friday, I wanted to talk about the quick summary that we look at in terms of chapter 6 and chapter 5. So if you have particularly looked at these many paragraphs, 44 paragraphs in chapter 5, 27 in chapter 6, I think it's important to get hold of what is possible for each of us to do. How do we respond? Because the encyclical is not something that is meant to be kept on a shelf not something that is meant to be in e-space. I think it's something that we need to start to use. In the first point, I'd like to highlight that can we, in some way, help to make for a better political environment. In some way, as we respond, first of all, let's get rid of this idea that politics is not a good place, so let's not. We need, therefore, to bring Jesus' light into politics. We need to start to develop the ability to see. And also, to some extent, we may not stand for election. But can you at least know your rights? Can you at least know what you're supposed to expect? Can we start to encourage our politicians to stop looking at narrow gains, populism, right? That's the word Pope Francis highlights, as looking at gains that come from selfish use of people. Let them know that we are seeing through their ideas, their methods, and that we are therefore not going to be manipulated. This, I think, would be one fallout. The second is to actually look at asking ourselves, are we totally in tune with what's happening in the economy? The economy today, where very often we are seen as just consumers who are fed certain things. So I buy one, I get one, I buy two, I get one. Are we able to actually go beyond that and start to see and demand an economy that is inclusive? It's not just about who has the money controls it all, but can there be a possibility that all the food grain lying in FCI go downs, all that is kept aside is actually reaching the one who is in need? This is very often not the case. This may be where political power exerted by us, not just at election time when we vote, I'm hoping all of us do, but also in course of asking through that period of time, whether it is that whole period of 5 years, whether it's my local corporator, my MLA, my MP, I'm asking them, do we actually do that? What did you do? So those questions that were at the end of chapter 5, what impact have you made by being there as one of our leaders? And then, of course, chapter 6, in our course of our dialogue, I'm sure each of us will find ways to, actually examine being kind, being a person in dialogue, because these are things that we can do well. I close here. I want to thank you for your attention, and particularly look forward to you reading at least these 2 chapters, chapter 5 from paras 154 to 197, and chapter 6, para 198 to 224. Thank you.